Oh, good. There's Jade back. Okay, Morgan, I need to mark that you're here. Okay, fixed. So roots, it's always said the roots have 4 functions, and I will rattle that off in my biology class. You might remember that, those of you who were in my biology class last semester, because I think it happened last semester. Some student called me on it. I only named 3. They said, what's the 4th one? And I'm like, I don't know. I never can remember what the 4th one is. And here's why, if you look at this. First one is to anchor the plant into the soil. The second is to absorb water and minerals. And the third is to store food or water. And those are really straightforward. Boom, boom, boom. So I can always remember those. And the fourth one, it's like, here's other specialized functions. That's what it is. How vague can you get, right? So this one depends upon the root. That fourth function can change depending on the type of root, the plant. It's variable. Okay, and that's why I never remember it, because it's not very specific. But those are your 4 functions. Okay, there's those main 3 that they have, and then that 4th one. Now, again, exactly how much storage of food and water is done varies by the plant. Okay, and things like that. So, but these are still your basic ones. And my slide's not going to advance for me. Are y'all seeing it?
I just see it on number 2.
Okay, there we go. That's the presentation mode. Are you seeing 2 slides now? You're seeing the main one and like the next slide coming up?
Yeah.
Okay, that'll work. We'll just go with that. Here we go. Okay, so now now we know what they do. How do they grow? So, hey, how are your plants coming? Is everybody on that plant lab or after dinner gardening lab? Do you have your plants in the soil, or do you have your seeds in your paper towels to start germinating? What's going on? Let me know. Tell me.
I do not. I got them and then I didn't plant them soon enough, and both of my fruits started rotting.
That may not be a problem, actually. Okay, were you doing like pomegranate? Right? No, what were you doing?
I was doing pineapple and kiwi.
Okay. Pineapple's probably a problem. Actually, it doesn't matter if the fruit rots. Excuse me, my nose is itching all of a sudden. How does the top of the plant look? Did it die or is it still green?
The top died. That's
Okay.
how I needed to get a new not watermelon. Pineapple.
Yeah, you'll need to get a new one of that. Now the kiwi, if the fruit rots, but you can still extract those seeds out. And they're not like soft and squishy. You can still use that. Doesn't matter if the fruit rots.
All right.
On that.
I'll check for squishy seeds.
They're squishy seeds. Okay, yeah, sorry. I was going to try to help you salvage, but how about, okay, anybody else? How's it going?
I need to pick something different than a watermelon because I have not found.
Yeah, it's kind of the wrong time of the year, really. Depends. And oftentimes what you find, if you find any, they're pre-sliced and they're also seedless this time of the year. Well, let's see. If is anybody in here doing, I've got it written down, but wow, I'm not sure. I had it in the grade book here. Maybe I still do, or did I take that out? I've got it. If you're interested in doing something like a melon type plant, how about doing an acorn squash? Because you can get those now.
Squash?
The acorn? The acorn
okay.
squash. Do you know what the acorn squash looks like? They're not the yellow crickneck. They're those kind of green acorn shaped things.
Yeah, I know what you're talking about.
Yeah, they grow pretty well. Okay. Those seeds grow pretty well. So just do that. It keeps you kind of in that melon type, I mean, squash melon different, but I mean, that's still that viney kind of category if you like it, if you like that. And that'll be good. So, wow, we lost 2 people.
My power just went off, so if the connection
goes away. That's why.
Okay, that's Morgan talking, and I'm going to put
Yeah.
you down as acorn squash. Yeah, well, we just lost Miguel and Sabrina at the same time, and they're usually both on campus. I don't know where they live because they may live. I don't think. Yeah, I think Miguel lives in the dorm. I don't know about Sabrina. So campus may have just had an issue. Are either one of you on campus?
No, I'm at home,
Okay. I'm
but I'm
wondering-
like 2 minutes from campus.
Yeah. Okay. I'm curious about that. Okay, well, we'll go on. I'm sure I'll get an email eventually about that. Well, I kind of wanted to hear from them how they were doing on stuff too. Okay, so how that carries into what I was getting ready to talk about was I was wanting to know if anybody had done put the seed in the paper towel to germinate the seed process, because that doesn't work for every seed. But if it is one of the strategies that you ran across and chose to do, it's a really cool one to do. And I think it will work. I'm pretty sure it'll work with the acorn squash, Morgan. And I don't know, Jade, about kiwi. Okay. I believe it does, because I believe I've seen students do it in the past, and I do believe they were successful with it. And on that, what you can do, is you can always do two. You can if you want, if one of your procedures or the procedure you wanted to follow said stick it in the soil, you can do that. And there's so many seeds in a kiwi, you've got plenty to go ahead and put some in a paper towel too, and do it that way as well. And then if you write that up, that's bonus points. So write it both procedures. What you will see happen first is that the seed will sprout. And I know for me as a kid, until I learned this differently in my plant science classes, I always thought that the shoot came out first, the stem comes out first, the plant comes out first. It just makes logical sense, because you've got to get leaves out there to start photosynthesizing, right? So wouldn't that be the first thing it produces? But it's not. The very first thing that comes out of a seed is the root. So upon germination, embryo's radicle grows out. It's called a radicle. It's the first little thing that pops out there. It develops into the first root. So I always think of it as the root. Okay, it's actually got another name before it comes out. It's called a radicle. Now that radicle may develop into different types of roots depending upon the plant. So it can develop into a thick taproot, okay, which is shown here in the picture. Or it can develop into like a fibrous root system, which we talked about in the next one. Okay. Dicotyledonous plants, shortened to dicots. So Jade was in my biology class last semester. She learned about dicots. So and you weren't. So, and I don't know if you know them from another class or not. Remember them from high school biology or whatever. But di means two, and cotyledon is the seed leaf. Okay, the first little green leaves that come out of the seed. It comes out, they're all wrapped up in a little stem, and then they will come out. If two of them come out, two die, then it's a dicot. Okay, those the first leaves are called cotyledons. So dicotyledon means two seed leaves. If the plant puts up just one little leaf, and that'll usually be long and thin, and it's blade shaped like a grass blade, because that's what they are, grasses typically. Those are called monocotyledons, because it's just one little leaf. One seed leaf, monocotyledon. Okay. So our dicotyledons are going to have a taproot system most generally. Okay. And then the fibrous root system, like what is depicted here, is going to be a monocot. Okay. Which, like shown here, this looks like a Bermuda grass. Okay.
On
Yeah.
the two leaves, do you mean like, hold on.
But I mean, like what? You broke off there at the end. I didn't catch the last word you said.
Like that? Like with the two leaves off the stem?
Yeah, but this actually, no. I mean, this doesn't show them. And when we get further along into seed development, which is I know seeds are a category. We'll go into that a little bit more. I don't have a good slide of that handy to show you.
Because
Um,
my little parsnip is already doing its little thing.
okay. So you were just having problems with the watermelon. You didn't have any issues with. Let me see if I can quickly find a slide for that. Well, let's see. I've got kind of a particular image in mind that I always like to. Okay, this is probably the best one right here. Though that's not really the seed leaf coming out. Okay, can you see that slide over here at the side? Is that showing for you?
Yeah, I can see it.
Okay, so see the monocot is your grass blade there, and your dicot has 2 leaves there, but that's, yeah, there's got to be a better. I want this first germination. The bean seed in the grass is what I'm really looking for. And man, it's in all the textbooks. Why is it not like the first thing popping up here? Of course, when you're looking for it, it never is, right? If I were looking for something else, that would be all over the place. So I don't think this is really a good. So did you ever do in school, maybe grade school or junior high or even high school biology, the sprouting of the bean seeds?
No, we didn't.
Oh, here we go. This is probably what we want, maybe. When you sprout the bean seed, you get these like little like round leaves come out, look like mouse ears, Mickey Mouse ears. Okay. And here, this kind of shows it a little bit. And well, it shows them forming in the seed. This is your seed, and here's your 2 little cotyledons here. They're going to unroll into little round leaves, and then here's just in the single, the monocot, you just have the one. I am not finding at all this, there's this ideal picture that I think really depicts it very well, and it's just not here. But it's not the older leaves. They're showing older leaves on the plant is to show, well, we got 1, we got 2, but that's really not it because the cotyledons come out first. And then they're kind of protective leaves, and they'll actually die off and go away relatively quickly once the other leaves start coming. And the more mature leaves are definitely shaped differently, that blade versus that kind of more rounder, pointy leaf shape. But those first 2 leaves, they look different from anything else, really. And so that was what I was wanting to show, because those are the only leaves that are monocots, are those first 2 that come out. And that's what you've got to really look for, is when germination happens and those first 2 leaves come out after your root comes out. But anyway, maybe when we, like I said, we get into leaves, we'll have some better diagrams out of the textbook, and you'll see what I'm talking about. Okay, so the dicotyledon here, the cotyledons are not there anymore. Okay, they would have been the first little leaves that would have come out down here, but they would have died off. And these are mature leaves here. Okay. So with our monocots, we can get some things occurring. We get what's called adventitious roots. And then we get the standard fibrous root, which is what almost all of your grasses have, this nice fibrous root system that spreads out in the soil. These are fantastic for holding soil in place. So when you have bare ground and high wind situation, you got potential for soil erosion, also lots of water runoff. These are the types of plants you want to make sure you've got planted in those areas to stop soil loss. That was one of the things that happened in the Dust Bowl leading up to the Dust Bowl, is that we over farmed, we cleared lots and lots of wooded areas and turned them into open fields. We cleared out native grasses and planted crops, and some of those crops were dicots. Okay, they were not grasses. Now, wheat is a grass, and oats are as a grass, and we did plant grasses, but we planted them in rows, right? And there was a lot of space in between the rows, so you could get the horse down the row, so to cultivate later and stuff like that. There's a standard row width, by the way, and I don't remember now, it's 30 some odd inches is like standard row width, and we still use that today. And my agronomy soils teacher, because my degree is in agronomy biotechnology, this is my area right here, plants and soils, and I taught soils classes as a master's student, as a grad student for the soil science teacher I taught for a year and a half. I taught his labs. So anyway, the that row width is based upon the standard average width of a horse's hips. Okay, because you had to get the horses. So there you had all that space. That's like nearly 3 feet, a yard in between the rows in a field. And we wanted to keep that ground bare, because any weeds that popped up in there, that was competing with our crops for moisture and all that. Some of what we didn't realize, though, is that we were losing moisture to the air if that ground's not covered. And every time the rain came, some of that soil washed away. And every time the wind blew, it blew away. And then we had drought. And that drought, I mean, everything died. Even places that we hadn't cleared died in many cases. And then the wind came. But there was a lot of study done at that time and afterwards showing that if we hadn't just clear cut everything and turned it all into farmland, such massive acres of farmland, and some land that wasn't really suitable for farming, then we wouldn't have had probably as bad a dust bowl as we did. Still would have been a drought. We still had issues, but maybe not as bad. And that's something that is probably one of the hardest arguments to get people who are like, I don't want to insult anybody, but pro vegetarian, anti-animal use at all, like all domestic animals for food should just be done away with, and because we're like cruel to them. But everybody can just eat vegetable food, plant food, and live. And it's kind of like, yeah, maybe okay, but you got to think about this. Not all land is farmable. Okay, if the rocks are too close to the surface, you cannot farm that land. But you can put cattle, you can put goats, you can put sheep, you can put pigs. I mean, you can put animals on that can eat the grass on there, and then we can eat them. So it's a balance, and we probably don't do a good job of balancing how we use the land, really. But it's like there's a little bit of fallacy in that argument of that, well, we just need to turn everything into growing food for people, and animals take up too much space, too much land that can be used for growing other things. And yeah, like I said, there's some land that could be farmable that we've got animals on, but not always. And then again, you got to look at that. Well, how much land do we want to have exposed like that for farmland? Some of it needs to be covered, okay, to keep erosion down, to keep the wind erosion down. I've got 2 fields here in front of my house, and on windy days, even when we're not in a drought, okay, if the wind gets close to the surface, that soil gets picked up anyway. My house is constantly dusty. I can dust it the next day. So the other part of the land is covered, and that's because my grandparents came in here and bought this place after the Dust Bowl and worked with the conservation company, the conservation department, government department, to restore the land. And the answer was plant grass. Plant grass, plant trees. I've got this nice windbreak here northwest of my house to cut down on the wind hitting the field. And what's north of that is grassland. So it's a balance and conservation thing that a lot of people really just, you don't understand it unless you have to study it to some extent, because you need to. So anyway, just one of those things we're throwing out there is like, caution people on kind of jumping on those bandwagons without fully researching all of the components of it. Okay. Because I think in everything concerning nature and sciences, look for balance. What's the balance? Anything too much of any one thing is something out of balance, and you destroy the balance, then you got problems. And I do think definitely we need to improve balance. We don't have necessarily all the answers or the best ways of doing things. We sometimes have the knowledge of the best way to do things, but the best way to do things is not always profitable either. So that's another, monkey in the wrench, or to get things going there. Okay, so root structure. We have 4 regions of the root that's shown here, bracketed off. And of course, this one kind of looks like it overlaps, and I'll talk about that. It's the root cap. The root cap is actually just this tan area here. If you've been in my classroom, I've got a model of this, usually sit it in the back, okay? And at this point, I would bring it up to the front and talk about it, but we'll use this instead. These cells here are these are dead, okay? I think I've got a slide that actually goes into detail about that, so maybe I should save that. But these are protective, okay? The next region is a region of cell division. And this is the apical meristem area right here. So these cells are rapidly dividing, growing, elongating. And see how tiny they look down here? Okay, very tiny and compact. It's because they're new cells. They've just divided, and they're going to grow bigger. Okay, they're going to grow bigger. But this is where all the cell division and growth is happening. And then we have behind that the region of elongation. That's where all these cells that have just divided down here, as other cells divide right behind here, this division process pushes the root cap down through the soil. Okay, that's going to get pushed down through the soil by the pushing of the cells behind it. These cells here also grow in length. Okay, so that's why, and that causes the root to elongate. Again, pushing. Okay. And in the region of maturation, these are mature cells. They're mature. They're going to be functioning, doing their thing, and they're not dividing. They're not growing. They're not elongating. They're mature, functioning, mature. Okay, so the root cap is this. They described as thimble shaped. It's made up of parenchyma cells, and it covers the root tip. It protects these cells behind it from damage, because think about having to push your way through the soil. If you take your finger and stick it in the soil, depending on how dry the soil is, that can be pretty hard to do. But even if the soil is somewhat loose and not too hard and dry, sticking your finger down through the soil, it can be kind of abrasive on your skin. If you got a lot of sand in that soil, if you got a lot of rock in that soil, the easiest thing to do, it can be kind of abrasive. So this is protecting the cells from that kind of abrasion of being pushed through the soil. It does secrete a mucilage that acts as a lubricant, and also functions in the plant's perception of gravity. Okay. All right, so to talk a little bit more about the region of cell division, this is composed of an apical meristem type that's going to be found in the center of the root tip. And that's going to be divided into 3 meristematic areas. We've got protoderm, ground meristem, and procambium. And I am probably not going to ask you all that much detail. We've already gone over some of these terms like meristem and procambium and what those things are. So here's what they give rise to. The protoderm. Derm means skin, right? Proto means before. So you see this and it's like, oh, that should be like before the skin. And that's really what it is. Those are the cells that are going to develop into the skin. Okay. We call it skin on us. It's epidermis is the proper term, right? Even on us, it's called epidermis. And on a plant, it's the same thing. It's that outer layer of cells that is the plant skin is the epidermis. Okay. And so protoderm is going to give rise to those type of cells, things that'll mature into those. The ground meristem gives rise to cortex and pith, which we haven't talked about cortex and pith yet. Okay, so but that will be coming. And then the procambium gives rise to primary xylem and primary phloem. And yeah, differences between primary xylem and primary phloem in a regular Okay. Again, I think we have more of that coming up on these slides. So let's just kind of keep moving here. Oh, I need to check my time too, because I was talking about. Yeah, I just got a message. It looks like about. Hey, Miguel, I see you're back on. Did you get knocked off because of something going on with power outage?
Yeah, the Wi-Fi is down here, but I'm using Zoom on my phone.
Okay, yeah, I know Sabrina got kicked off. I don't know if she lives on campus or not, but you both went out at the same time, so I thought maybe there was something going on with campus Wi-Fi.
Yeah, the power's out here.
Okay, wow. All right, are you like getting a lot of snow up there?
Yeah,
Okay, I'm 25 miles west, and it's been snowing constantly, I think, since yesterday morning. But we're getting this really, really fine powder that just isn't adding up to much. If it were bigger flakes, it would definitely be our 6 to 10 inches that they said, but we're not getting that. So is that are you getting bigger flakes there? A lot of accumulation.
not really, but it's just kind of, I don't
Just-
know.
You're not sure that may not be what caused the power outage. Maybe it's something else. I didn't know if we're getting
Yeah.
build up on lines or what. Okay. All right. Well, anyway, so yeah, I didn't get to hear about how your seeds are coming, or your seed in your plant. Are you doing okay so far?
On my avocado pit, it's coming along pretty fine.
Okay, good.
But my beet, at first I was using one from Walmart, and then I read that it would probably not work and that I should try to use an organic one
Okay.
or one without as many pesticides.
Okay.
And so I was gonna try to go get one from maybe like Natural Grocers or something like that,
Okay.
but I haven't had the chance so far.
Yeah, might be a little difficult till the weather clears. Okay. All
Yeah.
right. Okay. Good deal. The avocado will take longer. The beet, if the beet works. Beets are kind of, I mean, all the vegetative ones, a little bit iffy. And when we get back to you on campus, you'll probably want to get some rooting hormone from me on that as well. But yeah, that will not take as long as the avocado. So it's fine if you're wait a little bit, have to wait a little bit on that one. Okay, so region of elongation is where the cells are, like I said, the cells are very long, and it says here they become several times their original length. Okay, and vacuoles can merge in those cells. I've mentioned before that root cap is going to push through the soil, and when you get above that region of elongation, you don't have any further increase in size. So that portion of that plant, that portion of that root is going to stay stationary in the soil at that point. It's only that root tip that's actually getting pushed through, and the cells right behind it that are making new roots. So like I was saying last week, that the tree grows from the top, the tree grows from the bottom too, but the trunk doesn't, we don't put new cells on at the bottom of the trunk and push the tree up. Okay, that trunk is there, and new cells are growing at the top and extending out. Root's kind of the same way. We don't put new cells on at the base of the root and push the rest of the root down. Those cells formed where the growth and the pushing is occurring is right at the tip end. Okay. Region maturation of cells. Cells differentiate into various distinctive types of cells, and we can get things like root hairs forming. Okay, this is a little picture. Oh, hey, this is kind of more like the picture I was trying to show a while ago. Morgan and Emily. I was looking, Miguel, while you were gone, I was looking for an ideal picture of a dicot versus a monocot leaf, and I didn't find one, but this right here is the root coming out of the stem, but you can kind of see this little structure right here. Looks to me like that's one of your first little dicot leaves that would come out, and this over here would be the other side. Possibly, maybe there. Part of it's still going to be the seed. Some of that's going to be the seed that's going to always be there. So one of the things you'll notice is like the seed husk or hull. If you germinate your seeds in a paper towel, and Miguel, you'll see this with the avocado, is that the root will come out first, and that avocado seed will crack, and the root will come out. and then you'll get the shoot coming out with the leaves on it, or it'll have 2 leaves to start. Those are the cotyledons. But there'll always be that seed will always be there. Okay, it may kind of shrivel and dry, but it'll always be there. And that's how your bean seeds are too. That kind of leftover husk of that bean seed will always be there. You'll just have the leaves above it, and the roots kind of blow off the side. It'll kind of be off the side of where they join. Okay, so some of that green in there is still going to be the seed, but part of that's also the other leaf wrapped around that, and they just kind of unroll as it develops. But these root hairs, this is a really hairy root. Okay, some aren't as hairy as that, but the hairier the better in some ways, because this is all surface area for absorbing water. And of course, water carries dissolved minerals in it out of the soil, and so that's important for the plants to get its nutrition. Also, if you do germinate your seeds in paper towels and then transfer them to soil later, you got to be very, very careful about not breaking the root off when you transfer it. Breaking the root tip off, again, that's taking your apical meristem off. Usually, that means the root's got to struggle to produce hormones to take some lateral tissue and get a new meristem going, which it might be able to do, and it might not. Okay, depending on how much reserve it's got here in its seed. Yeah, these little hairs, the little root hairs, those aren't as critical if you lose some of those into your paper towel. But again, you don't want to lose too many of those, because that is the plant's ability to absorb nutrients out of the soil when you put it in there. And these are made up of little extensions of the epidermis. Okay, these are epidermal cells. So kind of little hollow tubes of epidermal cells that stick out there. So this term here, from here down to where these stop, is sometimes called region of differentiation, or the root hair zone. What a descriptive name there, right? Usually most of my experience is that it's usually referred to as region of differentiation. Are y'all still seeing my presentation? Or yeah, okay. I just changed it. There we go. That's probably back to better format. Okay, so the cortex, mentioned that word a while ago, so we really haven't talked about it yet. So here's our place to talk about it. The cortex is made up of parenchyma cells that exist between the epidermis, which is that outer single cell layer of plant skin, so to speak, and the vascular cylinder, which is going to be in the center, that's going to have the xylem and phloem into it. So depending on the size of the stem, you may have a lot of cortex, or you may not have much cortex at all. But what the cortex does is it's going to store food. These parenchyma cells are going to be food storage cells. There's an endodermis, which is an inner boundary of the cortex, consisting of a single layered cylinder of compact cells. And their cell walls are impregnated, saturated with suberin and lignin. Okay, these are kind of waxy. These are waxy type substances. And those are going to be on, say, radial and transverse walls. Yeah, okay. In this, we also have bands called Casparian strips. And the next slide is going to give you some visuals on these. So if you're like, wow, I'm getting so lost in these terms, hopefully it'll get clarified. As you can kind of see, the next slide coming up there has got a diagram. So what these do is they force water and dissolve substances that are entering and leaving the central core to pass through the endodermis. Okay, and that regulates the types of minerals absorbed. Eventually, inner walls become thickened with suberin, except for passage cells. So waxy things don't like water, and they're, the wax is thick enough, it's impermeable to water. So this slows down the movement of the water. And that's going to help in water conservation. Of course, plants need water, conserve water, because they're land-based. They don't live in the water where they can just get it whenever they need it. Your aquatic plants don't necessarily have as much of this. okay, as your land plants. But land plants are adapted to store water and to conserve it, keep it from getting away once they've got it. Okay, so that's what it's important that the water can move around in the plant, but we don't want it moving too fast and getting away too fast. Okay, so those are things to help kind of regulate that, control that, and slow it down. All right, so here we have the epidermis, the outer single cell layer, and then all of this in between. Here's our vascular bundle in the center, and all of this in between is called the cortex. So now if we focus in on just this vascular bundle, here's this vascular bundle right here. And this is an endodermis. Okay, so that's your single cell. Okay, single cell layer of endodermis, not the epidermis, but the epidermis. But this is what kind of surrounds and separates your vascular cylinder from the cortex of the cell. And then primary xylem. And these are the big circles. Your xylem is primary, and otherwise is all these big tubes here, okay, for transporting water. And then your primary phloem are these little tiny cells out here, some of them, okay, that are going to transport sap, the sugar substances, the food, okay. Then we have pericycle, and some of the passage cells they're talking about here that allow things to get in and out, okay. But you can see there's not a whole lot of those because they're kind of just whiter color, okay. And then they're particular about what they allow in and out because of their makeup. All right, so the vascular cylinder is just what is that core of tissues inside the endodermis. And the pericycle is the outer boundary of the vascular cylinder. Go back and take, oh, here, we show it even better. Okay. Pericycle. Here we go. And its outer boundary. Go back a little bit. There we are. So you can kind of see these cells right inside your endodermis. You can see these cells here. They're a little bit larger than everything else. They don't look like anything else, but kind of like if this red wall is a brick wall, and it's not really a wall, but yeah, we look at it that way. And then you've got this kind of like lighter like stone wall inside the brick wall. You can kind of visualize that a little bit. That's your pericycle. And then your phloem is going to be in these little divots inside. Now, not every stem looks like this. Okay. This is not a stem, this is a root. This is a dicot root. It's a star pattern. Okay, is a dicot root. And this is referred to as a star pattern, by the way. Okay, more on that. It's one of the distinguishing factors of monocots and dicots. Okay, circular patterns and star patterns. Okay. This one's a little small to see, but I think everything we need to really look at here is right there in this and in the previous. So let's keep moving. So let's look then at the inside the vascular cylinder again. Most of the cells of the vascular cylinder are primary xylem or primary phloem. In dicot or conifer roots, the solid core of xylem with arms in this cross section. So you could call it a cross. I don't know. My professors always called it a star pattern. Okay. But yeah, the xylem is forming that, and your phloem fills in the areas between the arms. Development of cambium. In most dicots and conifers, your vascular cambium develops from parts of the pericycle and other parenchyma cells between the xylem arms and phloem patches. In woody plants, not conifers, okay, and not, so, okay, let's talk about this a little bit. So dicots are almost always your tree, shrub type plants, And also a lot of your wild flowers or just general flowers are dicots. Okay. And not everything that's green on the ground in your yard in the summer is a grass. We'd say, oh, it's all grass, but it's not. Because if you've got clover in your yard, that's not a grass. If you've got henbit in your yard, that's not a grass. If you've got dandelions in your yard, that's not a grass. Okay, so what's a weed? Definition of a weed, there's no such thing, not to a botanist. Okay, that's what I had a professor was one of the first things. Anybody say weed, he'd get on to us about it. Weed, there's no such thing as a weed. A weed is merely a plant in a location that we don't want it. But every plant has a purpose and a use, and kind of need to respect that. Dandelions are incredibly useful. Did you know you can eat every single part of the dandelion? Yeah, and it's got some really good vitamins and things in it too. Anyway, don't want to go into that just yet. Well, that's future if we have time this semester. We're behind already, so don't know. But anyway, so those things though are dicots, and so those are what's called herbaceous dicots as opposed to woody dicots. And the woody dicots again are like trees and shrubs and vines. Now conifers, those are your pine trees, cedar trees. Those are again what we consider woody trees. But they don't actually classify as monocots or dicots because monocots and dicots are actually classifications for the Magnoliophyta only, okay, or your angiosperm division. Conifers are in the gymnosperm division, and they're different, okay? So that's why the conifers are talked about kind of separately here as not dicots, even though normally we look at them and go, oh, well, they're trees, so they're going to be a dicot. Doesn't apply. Okay, dicot doesn't apply to them. All right, so kind of a long explanation there for that. So in your woody plants, the cork cambium arises in the pericycle outside of the vascular cambium. I say, what's cork cambium? If you recall back from last week, we were talking about cork cambium. It's at the same slide. Whoops, I'm going too far. So the pericycle outside, I didn't go back too far. Here we go. So pericycle, is that making any sense? Okay, so this cortex.
They basically get us to look over their work and decide if it's ready to submit and stuff. And so we usually, on average,
Gonna have to be some pericycle cells out here. They haven't talked about that yet or shown or labeled it in a picture. I was gonna say these cells here are going to, but they don't have them labeled. Okay, cork cambium is what's going to make up the like the wood of a tree. The out part of it will become the bark. Okay, and so I think we'll have some more detailed description of that coming up later. Okay, so we have two types of growth. We have determinate growth and indeterminate growth. And determinate growth is going to stop after an organ is fully expanded or after a plant has reached a certain size. And so that has to do with kind of like aging of the plant. Indeterminate growth is where new tissues are added indefinitely season after season. And so depending on your plant, you may have both types of these growth visible or evident. Some plants may only have one of these. They may not have both of these basically in their cycle. If they're plants that don't live more than one season, you're not going to see a lot of indeterminate growth. Okay. So that fourth function of the roots that I always forget about, those other special functions, what can some of those be? Well, they can be modified for extra mineral and water absorption. They can be used for food storage roots, which these are going to be things that typically things we eat. Not everything. Some plants are have modified roots for food storage, but we don't eat those roots because those would be poisonous to us because of the components that are stored in there, or they just don't taste good. Different things there, but most roots and stems store food to some capacity, but some of them are really well developed for it. So what we have here is like a picture of sweet potatoes or yams. If you're good at telling the two apart, you might be able to correct me on which one those are, which ones of those that is. My grammar right here. What goes on here though is we have extra cambial cells develop in parts of xylem, produce large numbers of parenchyma cells, and these organs swell and then produce these storage areas for extra carbohydrates that are made during photosynthesis that aren't needed for plant growth or use. Okay, plants can also store water. Pumpkin families get at this, certain members of it, especially in dry areas. Arid means dry, by the way. Okay. They can produce these huge water storage roots. There's a picture here of something called a manroot. I am not familiar with that. I have to look that up, or somebody wants to look that up. That'd be cool. But that's an example of a yeah, kind of a weird, interesting looking structure of root that is designed specifically for water storage. Okay, and that's where I'm going to stop. I think propagation is kind of where we need to talk a little bit about for some of you for the after dinner gardening. So it's a good place to stop, and I'm out of time. Does anybody have questions?
No, not right now.
Okay, then I'll see you all on Wednesday. Probably on Zoom again, because I think we're supposed to get more snow. Stay warm.